Good morning. Taiwan spends billions of dollars on tourism marketing, but it doesn't seem to be working. In 2024, Taiwan saw about half as many visitors as it did in 2019, and there's planned billions of dollars of investment to try to bring that number up to 80% in 2025. And while a lot of these investments I really support, like improving trails around the East Coast and other places in Taiwan, I'm going to tell you why it's not going to work, because this doesn't address the fundamental cause of why Taiwan tourism numbers were always pretty low. So, one of the biggest inhibitors of tourism in Taiwan is that the government is the only advertiser. The Act for Tourism Development requires that all people engaged in tourism activity be licensed as a travel agent. That means that if anything that you offer includes transportation or lodging, if you don't have a travel agency license, you're not allowed to advertise that. For example, I personally know somebody in Taipei who was doing river tracing in Yilan, and because his river tracing tour included transportation from Taipei to Yilan, the Tourism Bureau threatened to fine him for around 2 million NT unless he stopped. And so that business was stopped. And so not only was it shut down, but also instead of having thousands of small advertisers all advertising their own business, bringing tourists from overseas and distributing that expense and promoting the island altogether, what we have is just a single large national advertiser. In theory, the very large travel agencies in Taiwan could participate in that, but most of their revenue comes from taking people out of Taiwan, and they're not that focused of bringing people in. Becoming a travel agency requires millions of NT in paid in capital, plus another 1.5 million put in escrow. And the most difficult to come up with is that you need to have in your company a travel agency manager with more than 10 years of experience working at a travel agency. And so for any of these small companies that a lot of them are owner operated, they simply cannot afford to hire somebody at 80, 100,000 NT a month to just sit in an office and do nothing, because that job is not required for the business they have now. Modern travel has shifted a lot, where almost all people are now booking online, and it just does not require this kind of institution that used to exist and maybe was required at the time when the Act for Tourism Development was written. This is a problem that we have run into many times, and in order to keep our business legal, we often have to license it to other companies, which add the cost but don't add much value, because almost all of the small companies in Taiwan, the people who are actually engaging with tourists and taking tourists, cannot meet these regulatory requirements. They are all operating either illegally or in a gray area, and so they will not advertise because they're going to be fined just for advertising. And of course, they won't be focused on the international market. They will be focused entirely on the domestic market, because Taiwanese people already have their own form of transportation. Because if you pick somebody up from a train station and book their Minsu as part of the tour that you offer, the package that you offer to international tourists who will care about that, you are going to be in violation of the tourism law. So this is what I think is the biggest hurdle, but there's actually quite a lot more. Just want to show you guys something real quick. Look at this. Look at that. Look how beautiful Taiwan is. Isn't that cool? That's really cool. The next major hurdle is tourism identity or branding or whatever you want to call it. But the simple fact remains that Taiwan is not going to be able to compete with Thailand and the Philippines on beaches. It's not going to be able to compete with China on Chinese culture. And so Taiwan has to find what makes it really special. And in my opinion, in a country with 2/3 mountains, the mountains make Taiwan really, really special. And there's also a wealth of indigenous culture and rural tourism here, which has a lot of potential. Austria has a lot of really nice canyons. New Zealand has a lot of really nice canyons. Taiwan has thousands and thousands of nice canyons. Canyoning in Taiwan should be a billion-dollar industry. Taiwan should be the canyoning capital of the world. In terms of environment, we have it right here. We also have a large population of highly skilled canyoners. Cannoning in Taiwan is top level, but it's never promoted overseas for 3 reasons. The first one is what I said earlier about small businesses not being travel agents. The next one is because the big agencies refuse to do it. And I have heard directly from the CEO of one of the largest tourism companies in Taiwan, you've all heard of it, that they just won't do water sports and they refuse to do water sports. It's just not going to be part of their business. One of the reasons for that is insurance. So none of these small companies can actually really operate legally. They're all in a gray area for an insurance problem. It is extremely difficult for cannoning or any other water sports or outdoor sports company to get proper insurance. The products are just not available in Taiwan, and the way that the insurance law works, it makes it a giant hassle for the customer to get it, and so they do a little workaround, which is not entirely legal. So when you give your coach or the company that you're working with your ID and other information, they're actually sending that to an insurance agent in an office somewhere who's going to force your signature on a document, because the only way to book insurance in Taiwan is with your personal signature, and it just doesn't work because you might not even be in Taiwan. And the actual company, the tour that's taking your tour, they can't do it because under the law, they're not allowed to sell the insurance. It can only be booked through the insurance company, which you don't have a relationship with as the customer. And so the only way around this is to get area insurance, where all of the customers who go into an area will be covered, but these have big minimums, let's say 20,000 people a year, which these small companies are not going to be able to fill. And also, it's not really the way that most outdoor sports works. If a company's going to take you cannoning, whoa. I don't know if you guys can hear that, but I don't know if the mic blows it out, but wow, it's loud. It's so cool here. Okay. Area insurance applies to an area, and everybody who goes into that area is then covered by the insurance. All the company will need to do is, put your name in there. The problem is that if it rains or that the water level changes, every company will have a backup so that you don't lose your tour, and we'll just take you there instead. However, the area insurance won't cover that. It will only cover the primary location. And so if there's any changes in weather or anything like that, it will just have to be canceled, although probably not anyway, because most companies just wouldn't be able to afford area insurance. It just wouldn't make financial sense to get area insurance in all of the different rivers or mountains that they go to. I do outdoor recreation in Taiwan, and occasionally we do take people. And as a foreigner on an ARC, it is very, very important for me that everything is legal. And so to meet those legal requirements, I have to add significant costs, in some cases double to the price of what the consumer pays. And so this is not a good way to go about it. And these laws are locking the potential of Taiwan behind a gate of legal framework that it can't escape from. And so to really unleash the tourism potential of Taiwan, there's going to need to be serious overhauls in the legal structure of the tourism industry. This is far more critical and far more it's so loud. It's far more critical and far more important than just investments into pass somewhere, which I keep doing because I like having nice hiking trails. But that won't solve the problem. The problem is more structural. In fact, it might be even more structural than that. There is a part of Taiwanese culture when it comes to outdoor recreational sports, all outdoor recreational sports, that prevents people from working together. I think that this is mostly due to not having sports programs for children, because these coaches never worked together as children. They can't work together as adults. And it seems like everybody in the outdoor sports industry is each other's enemy, and they do all sorts of childish antics to sabotage each other's businesses, from starting rumors online about them, to in some cases even going, let's say, to the river that they're in and physically destroying their equipment, cutting ropes, things like that. And so this is very different than in other places, to say, like the Philippines, where all the diving coaches work at different companies, all the little tour operators, they're operating different companies, but they all work together and they're bouncing. One's overbooked, they're just going to send it to the next one. They're going to recommend the other people, and at the end of the day, when all the tourists go home, all of the tour guides, everybody, they're all friends. They go to the same bar to drink. It is a vastly different environment to work in, and the outdoor sports and recreation environment in Taiwan is extremely toxic. And that is why I try to stay out of it as much as possible. But even just when we started selling these boats and when we started the pack rafting in Taiwan, it didn't take long for other companies to just jump up, talk shit about us, do things that try to hurt our operators, things like that, instead of working together. And it's extremely disappointing, and it's something that is going to have to be solved to really make a mature market. And that is one of the reasons that I want to do the outdoor recreational sports park for all sports, to bring everybody together, especially children, so children can play sports together, learn teamwork together, and not grow up to be narcissistic adults. Anyway, sorry for that tangent, but it is a factor that is limiting growth. And when I talk about the tourism market, it's very outdoor recreation is very, very large, both domestically and for international tourists. And what's so good about the outdoor recreation market is that almost all of the spending will go directly towards someone's salary. So it's not a very high capital intensive industry where a lot of the money that's spent on the tourism, let's say in your fancy hotel, would be spent on imports from abroad, or, financing to the bank, things like that. When you go and take a small tour, almost all of that money is going directly into your tour guide's pocket. And that is a much better just economic model than most other types of recreation, and has a bigger benefit to the economy than most other types of recreation. So it's really important, I think, to develop this industry and promote this industry. And of course, this starts with giving children access to outdoor sports, because commercial markets are products of people's hobbies. They don't just poof out of magic air, but there's also going to have to be serious overhauls to the framework that governs them. You asking anything? If you fixed the travel agency requirement and made it easier to purchase insurance, that's like 90% of all of the problems. Like, everything else will kind of like fix itself. Um, perhaps one reason people can't work together in the outdoor industry is because they're all on edge, because there's those difficulties involved. When we go around and try to do the rafting in Taiwan, so we've talked to many local governments. There's about 12 rivers which are suitable for large scale commercial rafting, and we just always run into the same regulatory framework problems. Uh, but the laws were made by people who aren't familiar with the sport, essentially. Uh, it's yeah, is a problem.